Well, hello everyone. Ogre27 Kane here today, and we're gonna do our top 10 Nintendo Switch games of 2024. Let's do a brief overview and explain what this video is all about. So the one thing about the Nintendo Switch is that it's really hard to define what year exactly each game releases. A lot of games release digitally in the year previous and then release physically in the year after. This made this list a huge struggle for me. I couldn't include games like The Last Faith or some of the other awesome gems I played this year. Instead, I chose to stick with games that all released physically and digitally here in 2024. Now there's a few exceptions to this list, as you've seen with games like The Legend of Legacy, as they were previously released on the 3DS or Ys 10 Nordics in Japan, but they're completely different in these versions of the game. So I figured I would include them because they're great games. So without further ado, let's start out with number 10. So here at number 10, I have Expeditions, a Mud Runner game, and this game was both very fun and very disappointing to me. I really loved the whole truck driving aspect, and SnowRunner is one of my favorite games of all time, but this game has a lot of disappointing features to it, and it takes away a lot of the fun of SnowRunner. This game is more about how you get to your destination than it truly is about how you enjoy the world around you. This game has a lot of direct missions, very similar to the old Mud Runner American Wilds game, and it doesn't have so much of the free roam, exploration, and do whatever you want aspects that SnowRunner does. That doesn't mean it's a bad game, it's a lot of fun, and some of the physics on it actually work really well. They're a little less frustrating than SnowRunner. But that being said, it is kind of a disappointment and not really the game I was expecting or hoping for. It's still a great game, it's still worth your money, and it's still fairly cheap, so if you like these kind of games, you enjoy truck sim or driving games, and SnowRunner is one of your favorites, then this is definitely a game to check out. But I do recommend looking at some videos of it first and deciding whether it's worth it. So let's move on to number 9.
A blunt instrument. We will use it to destroy Enyo.
So in at number 9, we have Slave Zero X, and this is another toss-up game, as I know it has released previously on other consoles, but it released both physically and digitally on the Switch in this year, so therefore it made it onto my list. It's a really fun 2.5D side-scrolling beat-em-up game, but be aware this is one of the most challenging games that you will ever play, and it's probably the most challenging game on the Switch. I still have not completed it, and it's not a terribly long game, but you will find yourself doing a lot of the same things over and over. If the frustration doesn't bother you and you love the sense and feeling of accomplishment, then this game is definitely for you. But if you get frustrated easily and you don't like dealing with a lot of cheap mechanics from enemies, then steer clear, because this game has a ton of that. That being said though, the artwork is beautiful, the voiceovers are really well done, and the music is fantastic. There's a lot of upsides to this game, and on top of that, it's fairly cheap. So it's kind of one of those games where I have to recommend it if you're into it, but if you're not, I highly recommend you stay away. This game will punish you, it will destroy you, and it'll make you happy all at the same time. So without further ado, I think we should go ahead and move on to our next game, number 8 now. So at number 8, we have The Legend of Legacy, and this game could be a bit contentious. It was a 3DS game released a while ago, but I believe that this Switch version is definitely the most superior version and almost a whole new game. They fixed a ton of the mechanics that were super cumbersome and kind of frustrating about the original release, and they added a bunch of new features which should help alleviate a lot of those problems. The game has a great story, a fantastic art style, and is built by the same guys who built the Alliance Alive. If you enjoy the 2D, 3D-ish watercolor art style, this game is absolutely gorgeous and it pops like crazy. I can't recommend this game enough, and I know this game will be fairly valuable going forward because it's kind of a niche game. There's not really a lot of people talking about it, and even when it originally released, it was very much under the radar. So I can't necessarily recommend this game if you're not into RPGs or anything like that, but if you're looking to collect or looking for something different, then this is definitely one you want to have on your list, and one that I definitely recommend putting in your library. So let's go ahead now and move on to our next game, which I believe is a little more contentious in some areas than others. But without further ado, let's go ahead. So in at number 7, we have The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. And this game for me is a really weird one, because at first I was not interested at all, then I saw some footage and I decided to pick it up. I really enjoyed the first half of the game, but I realized as the game went on, it became fairly repetitive and cumbersome with its menu system. It's not a bad game by any way, shape, or form, and it is a good Zelda game. But for me, I need to have that combat from the old Zelda games. I need to be in control of the situation, and the fact that you're so reliant on this menu system and how you solve it with each one of these creatures is kind of annoying, especially when you get into a situation where it's a little tense and you can't figure out exactly the right answer. Now that being said, there's always a multitude of different answers in this game and different ways to solve problems. This is really good, but at the same time, it also makes a lot of the puzzles very simplistic. You won't necessarily spend a ton of time if you have enough different variation of things to build. So, that being said, it's an okay game, and it deserves its spot on this list, but it's nowhere near close to something like Tears of the Kingdom, or even Link's Awakening in my opinion. So let's move on to the next, number 6 now. So in here at number 6, we have Cat Quest 3, and this game turned out to be an absolute hidden gem for me and my daughter. We played Cat Quest 2 and really enjoyed it, and kind of got a little bored with some of the mechanics, and then came along this game. It fixed a lot of the issues I had with Cat Quest 2 and a lot of the needless grinding, and it has a lot more weapons and armor and items and magics and things to upgrade and things to explore and find. The only disappointing thing to me about this game is once you really get into it and really enjoy it, the game ends. It's not a terribly long game, and together it may take you between 10 and 15 hours to complete. That being said though, having the local co-op play and the drop-in, drop-out feature really lends itself well to being a great multiplayer game, and it really does have a lot of other fun and unique aspects to it. I love the art, the animation, and as far as the music goes, it's pretty good for what you expect. Now, this character you're seeing here is kind of a play on words, and there are tons of puns in this game. This is one of my favorite ones because it's a pun on Castlevania and Dracula, if you can tell. But all that being said, I really enjoyed this game, and if you need a good multiplayer fix, check it out. So in here at number 5, I have Broadsword Warlord Edition, and this game may come as a surprise to some people because it's a really janky, graphically ugly game, but the game has a ton of fun to it, especially if you're a tactical or strategy RPG fan. The game starts out fairly easy and it explains itself well enough, but by the time you get to mid to late game, the game gets really hard and it starts forcing you to really think about how you're going to attack each situation. The battles themselves are bite-sized, they don't take too long, you can get through them in under an hour. Some of them you can even get through in a few minutes, especially once you learn their patterns. But the game itself is a nostalgia fest for me. It really brings back a lot of great memories from the early, I want to say 2000s, late 1990s or so. It has that top-down aesthetic and that whole chunky nature to it, and all the characters are ugly, and the music is repetitive, and the sound effects and everything else. But all that being said, the game has so much charm and so much allure to it that it really is a hidden gem. And I know when I bought my copy, it was pretty much nil to non-existent, so I can guarantee you this game will probably be fairly rare, especially when people like myself start figuring out how much fun it is on the tactical aspect. So let's move on to number 4 now.
So So many new visitors race through the city.
So at number 4, we have Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. And this game surprised me. It came out all the way back in January, and yet it still turned out to be one of the best Metroidvanias of the year. The only frustrating thing about this game is it does not do a good job explaining where to go or what to do next, and you will find yourself getting lost quite often. But that being said, all of the animation, the artwork, the music, the story itself are all very well done, and the game does have a lot of things for you to upgrade and find new abilities and new weapons and things. Well, excuse me, the weapons maybe not so much. You use the same swords, but you do upgrade them and find new abilities for them. The other thing I have to mention is that this game is absolutely gorgeous, and it runs extremely well on the Switch. I was really surprised with the performance. This is really the best game that Ubisoft has come out with in years, and it's really surprising because it's the one game that they're not going to pursue a sequel on from what I understand. Ubisoft sucks now, and it really sucks to see them do this, make something so beautiful, and then completely collapse in on themselves and decide not to repeat this. Instead, they'd rather give us garbage and all kinds of loot crap. Man, I miss the old Ubisoft, and I miss Prince of Persia. Please bring this series back. Let's move to number 3 now. So here at number 3, we have Ys 10 Nordics. And this game did release in Japan previously, but I don't really consider that a full release. Getting this in 2024 physically really did make the difference, and in my opinion is the way it should have always been released. That being said, the game is not as good as Ys 8, and I want to put it on the same level as Ys 9. It does have a lot of fun exploration, and you do have a ship that you can go all over the world and explore new islands and find new cool things. But having just you and Karja, only 2 characters in this game, is a little disappointing from what I was used to in all the other Ys games. You do work in tandem, and you have a partnership attack, if you will, that you're required to use to beat most enemies, and the game does try to be a little more complex on this front. But it doesn't really necessarily succeed because it still functions with the same way that all the other enemies and characters and worlds still ran. The game is built completely around the story, so if you don't advance the story, you're not going to be able to explore too much. Now, I do enjoy the magic system on this game, and I do love the fact that it has a skill tree now, but they're pretty much unnecessary as you'll find yourself going down the same paths to get the abilities that will help you the most. It's not really a bad thing, but it is something I have to mention. It's up there, but it's not one of the best Ys. Let's move on. So Fantasian Neo Dimension is my number 2, and for good reason. I had a really rough time in my life over the last few months, and this game came in at just the right moment, and the story captivated me and kept me in. It helped me to find that special place where I could be in my own head and be by myself, really enjoy the story and gameplay, and yet still contemplate everything going on in my life. This game will hold a special place in my heart for a long time, and it's not necessarily because it's the best game out there. It's just the game that I needed at the right time. I don't know if you've ever experienced that yourself, but sometimes just finding that one thing that gives you the moment of reprieve is worth every aspect. The game is beautiful, it's absolutely gorgeous, and even though it was an Apple Arcade game, they did a great job porting it over to the Switch. It does have some weird frame rate issues from time to time, and some of the control on it sucks when you're wandering around because the camera will move and your control stick won't auto-allocate to the right place. This will cause you to run into a lot of walls and have a lot of pain and pressure with that. But outside of that, the combat's really fun, the story's great, the characters are great, the artwork, animation, music are all fantastic, and I really hope that this isn't the end of Hironobu Sakaguchi and Nobuo Uematsu. This game really does deserve a sequel or a spiritual successor, so let's go ahead and move on. Well, number one, I think, is a shoo-in for almost everybody. Unicorn Overlord was not the best game of last year, but possibly one of the best games of the last decade. This game brings back ogre battle vibes like no other, and they nailed it. Not only that, the game looks absolutely gorgeous, and the performance on it is top-notch. I didn't have a single crash, I never had any frame rate issues, I never had any broken dialogue. All the characters seem to be well-spoken and well-acted. Everything about this game screams Game of the Year to me, and the fact that it didn't really get any nods from anybody just shows me how out of touch most of the video game world is. Nowadays, we celebrate the same mediocrity and we look at the Call of Duties and the Maddens as being the top dogs. But the fact of the remains that a game like this is truly what pushes the game industry forward. It changes a genre, it enlightens us on what a great story and all these great mechanics working together can do. There's no way to explain how awesome this game is. You have to play it for yourself. Not only that, Vanillaware is one of the best studios out there, and I really hope this game continues to sell for them. I really want a sequel to this game, and I'd love for this world to grow and expand. This game is everything I've been dreaming of for the last 20 years, and frankly, they nailed it. I can't speak highly enough about this game. There is literally not a negative thing to say about it. The only negative thing you might be able to say about it is that you haven't played it. That being said, this game is truly the game of the year for me, and this game might go down on one of my favorite games of all time. Well, that's gonna do it for 2024, folks. Thank you for watching today's video. It was a blast to make. I upload every single Monday. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day. This is Ogre27 Kane, and I'll see you in 2025.
I hope you saw that. Have I proven myself yet?